Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am joined not by one, but two fabulous guests. I have Sarah Gregg and Jill Ritchie from Intuitive Psychology. Sarah, I'll start off with you. Tell us who you are and what you do.
So we are the very proud co-founders of the Intuitive Psychology Association, and we are the world's first and only intuitive psychology coach training program where we blend modern psychology with ancient wisdom to get the most transformative results for coaches.
That's awesome. And Jill, what can you tell us about you?
So I'm Jill, and I'm also the very proud co-founder, and I'm from Scotland in the UK, in case you hadn't worked that out from my accent. So Sarah and I both live in the UK, and what can I tell you about me? I'm highly intuitive, and my passion is to bring as many people as we possibly can back to authenticity, back to their intuition. Your intuition is your superpower, and it is a huge mission that we are on within our organization to do this for as many people as we possibly can.
That is awesome. So I'm not going to keep addressing, I'll let both of you or whoever wants to answer, but intuitive psychology, can you kind of break down what I think I know what it means, but I would love for you to tell me what it means.
So intuitive psychology, so it's our innate ability to know, trust, and heal, weaved with the scientific methods of psychology understanding. So it's really a blend of two worlds. It's our intuitive world, a world that is grounded in ancient wisdom and a bit of mystery, but one that we certainly know exists. If you're listening right now, it's likely that you've had some form of intuition. You've had times when your intuition has spoken really strongly to you. Maybe you've had a gut feeling about a certain someone, a situation that you've been in. And the easiest way to think about how powerful intuition is to actually think about the times when you've gone against your gut. Like, how well have those times worked out for you whenever you've ignored that really strong signal and you've gone in the opposite direction? And then you've went, I knew, and you didn't know how you knew, right? You weren't really sure, but you just had this strong knowing without knowing. So we know that intuition is the sixth sense. We know that every single person has their intuition. It doesn't exist necessarily more strongly in males or females. It's just something that is universal to each of us. But when we kind of approach that world of mystery, it can feel unknown. How do I know how to trust my intuition? How do I work with that? So we wrap the evidence base around intuition to really help people to understand how to access their intuition. And the way that we do this is it's so much more than just the simple intuitive nudge. That's kind of what the most easiest way to describe it. Actually, the way that we work with intuition really enables you to bring you back to a deep sense of intuitive trust. It's a way to really help you heal from your past, be fully grounded and immersed in the present, and really align with that compelling future so that the past makes sense. You're able to really engage in the present, and you're able to take that aligned action towards your future and be in that state of harmony. So it's this innovative framework that really brings the worlds of science and spirituality together.
Okay, so that leads me to this question popped in my head. I'm like, okay, totally get it. You're right. We have that intuitive feeling. But in this day and age where perhaps we are the most actually disconnected from our own, paying attention to our own feelings. Now, certainly it makes sense if we go, being a history major, I'll say we go back to where we didn't have computers, TV, internet, all of that. We go back to, let's say, the early 20th century, where your intuition probably played a lot bigger role in saving your bacon because
Mhm.
there was perhaps more danger, but you paid attention to your gut that this doesn't feel right. But nowadays, I think lots of people we're disconnected from our own feelings, if that makes sense, or our own intuition. Would you guys agree with that? And how are you bringing people kind of back to paying attention?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that, Xander. And it's quite sad, really, because our intuition isn't passive. It's there, it's always ready to work with us, but we are so distracted by so much information, social media, the media. We are being fired and wired so many pieces of information that sometimes it's almost taking us away from really trusting ourselves. And we can see how many people are struggling with their mental health, struggling with how they're feeling, communicating their needs, boundaries, really living authentically. And actually, even people that are perceived as being super successful, they maybe have all of the wealth, ticking all the boxes in terms of achievements, but they feel so low and so disconnected because they are disconnected from their own innate wisdom, their own intuition. So, regardless of how many achievements they have, people have probably never felt more lost and separate than they do now. And actually, what's so beautiful about intuition is it's free. It's not something that you need to pay for. It's something that is always available to us if we allow ourselves space to get present. And I know from my own experience, I was in corporate leadership for almost 21 years before I eventually got to that point of complete burnout, mum to two very young children, and I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. So on paper, I was achieving all of the things, had a very good lifestyle, lovely home, but I felt so unhappy and I felt so much shame layered on top of feeling that way because who was I to feel so disconnected and unfulfilled?
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand why I felt so unfulfilled. I'm like, I'm doing all the things. I did what they told me to do, but I feel so unfulfilled and I numbed out with so many things. But when I looked around me, Xander, everyone was the same. So it was really normalized. And I was like, well, this must just be what life is like. But I started to get sick. My
Yeah.
hair was falling out. I didn't sleep. And then one day I sort of
I would know
turned
nothing about that.
I turned to meditation. And by the way, for me, I can sit for hours in meditation now. I had never done this 8 years ago. I'd never ever sat in meditation. And that was challenging for me to sit because my mind was so busy with all of the pieces of information and all of the thoughts. But I was desperate. Full transparency, I was desperate to feel better and I didn't want to take medication because I knew I would just be papering over the
Definitely.
cracks. And it was that intuitive nudge to say, try this. And I did it on YouTube. I went on YouTube and I tried this 30 days beginner's meditation. And that's why I'm saying we don't need to always invest hundreds of thousands of pounds in different things. Actually, so much is available to us. That's what I did. And that was the catalyst for me going down my path that I did. I sat every day, and for first time it was 30 seconds, then it was a minute, then it was 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And suddenly everything started to get still, and I wasn't clear about, and it's so interesting because I'm looking at your background, right, of what you've got in your book. It wasn't about all of the things I needed to know every single step. I just needed to take the first step
Absolutely.
and
And it's
just do
amazing.
that.
It's amazing. I talk about it all the time, how no matter how epic your journey, no matter how big whatever it is you're trying to do, maybe it's go back to school, run a marathon, write a book. When you take that first step, that 30-second meditation, you discovered that it's not nearly as difficult as you had imagined it was. And
Yeah.
ultimately, we can only do one step at a time, no matter how multitasky we all think we are, right? I joke because I
Mhm.
spent 20 years in the corporate world on technology side that I'm a single core mind in a multi-core world, meaning
Mhm.
lots of people, I mean, lots of things going on.
Mhm.
But truth be told, I cannot do math with my left hand and write an essay with my right hand. I cannot
Mhm.
multitask very well. I can sort of do a couple of things, but I'm not doing either one of those things
Yeah,
very well.
for sure. Yeah, it's funny. I wore that multitasker, and I think, and as women especially, Sarah, don't we were like, we can do it all, and I
Yeah.
wore that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
So to everyone else, it was like she's
I
crushing
can
life
make lunch and be on a phone
and do
call
all the
and
things. Watch me
change a
go.
diaper. Yeah.
But do you know the pure magic? And I've actually just returned from a few weeks in Bali. I went over a solo trip, and I spent time on a retreat and in really beautiful space there. And what I realized, and I realized before then, but really being the embodiment just most recently of it, is the power in the presence and each moment, because all we have is this one moment that we are in. Why do we want to multitask? Because in doing that, and not only does it add pressure to yourself and exhaust you, it actually takes you out of the present moment. And when you're in that present moment, that it's this portal opens up for so much more expansion and space and authenticity to really step forward. And for me, that was just such a most recent moment for me, where I was able to really tap into just the one moment, the one step,
Yeah.
and being in that fully and receiving that is just, it's the magic.
Absolutely. And I'm also a mental health provider. So when I'm doing counseling, I'm can't tell you the number of times I'm talking to my clients, perhaps that there's anxiety or depression, those being the top two things that people seem to, dealing with. I believe so wholeheartedly that you're right. Our bodies, we haven't made it evolutionarily this far without our bodies adapting and being able to help us get there. And I talk to them about paying attention to their somatic system, because if let's say you have anxiety, by the time your brain goes, oh, hold on, we're feeling anxious, there's probably already been multiple signs from the rest of your body
Yep.
that you were starting to feel anxious. And if you start to tap into that, amazingly, you can reduce or even cut off that anxiety attack, because our brains are fabulous. We're using what, like 10% of it. What's
Yeah.
the other 90% doing? Keeping us alive, making sure that we don't do anything too stupid. Now, of course, being a boy, we do lots of stupid things and we don't think things through, but that's not the point of the conversation. I'm just saying, you know, I know that even though I'm a big boy here, and I pay a little more attention, I still do stupid things. I don't pay attention to the intuition that goes, you might get hurt if you rode your bike off the roof of the shed, but it still sounded cool. So me and my buddy, do it. And it's only when one of us are sitting there with our ankle pointing the wrong way that someone goes, dude, we could get hurt. Women don't seem
Yeah.
to do that nearly as often. I don't know why.
Well,
Yeah,
I
we
don't think women
don't.
do the other things right enough. Women probably do it with many other things as
No,
well.
no, I know, and I'm
Yeah,
poking
for
fun at
sure.
myself, but I think that you're talking about intuition and stuff. Our somatic system, and if you don't know what that is, that's basically all of your nerve endings and stuff. Your body is aware. Your unconscious mind, I think, is aware way before your conscious mind that something isn't feeling right. That gut feeling, right? By the time you actually recognize that gut feeling, it's probably been going on for a little bit.
Exactly, exactly. And I love that you brought that up, like the unconscious and the conscious mind. Because intuition is the delivery system between those two mechanisms. It's a way to really signal to us what's happening because it's the gut brain, literally kind of like in the gut, in the somatic system, but also that unconscious that is processing. I think we process around 11 million bits of information, but only kind of consciously about 126. And that's actually when we're in a peak flow state, when we're really engaged. So that information doesn't just get filtered out and go nowhere. That information is in the brain, it's in the body. And actually, intuition is a really incredible way to tune in to exactly all of those things. It's our inner bank of wisdom that we can access at any point. And like Jill said, it's free, it's always available to us. It's our sixth sense. We outsource so much of our own power to other people. We're continually searching for the answers, listening to incredible podcasts, looking at YouTube, investing in people, reading the books, and all of that's amazing, right? And it plays a part. But what if you could learn how to cultivate your own awareness? What if you could really go in and understand all of those signals and cues that you've been talking about? How much can you imagine that your life would change when you become your own guru, when you become your own guide?
And I guess the question that not only I have, but I'm sure my listeners do, how does one start to do that?
Yeah. So we know from the psychology that intuition can be activated whenever we're in a relaxed state. So the easiest way is to close down our eyes. So actually at the Intuitive Psychology Association, we train and accredit coaches, and kind of our secret weapon in coaching, if you like, is eyes closed coaching. So we have a
Mm-hmm.
whole evidence-based way to train our coaches, but you can use and apply this really easily in your everyday life. So close down your eyes and just regulate your breathing. Just bring the body into a relaxed state. And what this is going to do from a scientific kind of point of view is it's going to move your brain waves into an alpha state. And we know that when we're in alpha state, that's when intuition really starts to become more active. We're able to feel more. We're connected to the body. And from that state, you can ask yourself different questions. So maybe you're at a juncture right now in your journey and you don't know like what step forward to take, right? You hear all of these great stuff, Sandra, that you're sharing, and it begins with one step forward, but you're like, I don't know if I want to move forward in that direction, right?
Right.
So one really simple exercise to do is to close down your eyes, just regulate the breath. Your mind's going to be a little bit busy for a while, and that's fine. Just, let the thoughts kind of like pass in and out. But once you kind of feel relaxed and you feel connected, you can ask yourself like a simple question, like think about the thing that you want to move forward with, that one step that you want to take, or you don't know what path at the crossroads, and just ask yourself, what if I do and what if I don't? And what if I do? Imagine what that looks like if you take the step forward and just let your intuition speak. And it will speak to you normally short, kind of like one single words, images, symbols, they'll all kind of come flooding into consciousness. And that's your evidence that you're speaking with intuition. If you get long narratives and the mind is quite busy, just means you need to take a few more breaths and spend a little bit longer in stillness, and that's good. And then equally, okay, well, what if I don't? What does life look like if I don't have the courage to take that one step forward? How does that feel? Like how does that feel in my body? Like what sensations are coming up for me? Again, is there any images? And just tune in. Just tune in and you'll notice just how intuition begins to deliver those answers that you've been looking for.
Absolutely. And it's funny, you were Jill, you were talking about meditating and like for 30 seconds and then 2 minutes, and now it sounds like you went to Bali and meditated for like 2 weeks without stopping, which is great. I found when I've done meditation practice that you're right, there's so much external
Mhm.
stuff that it does take a while. You gotta literally sit with it and pay attention to, like, as you quiet the mind, all of a sudden you have a moment to listen to all of those thoughts that are going through your head, and you're right, you have to sort of go, oh, okay, laundry, and let it go, and
Mhm.
dinner, and because I know I found personally, when I try and meditate, concentrating on trying to quiet my mind, which I think is counter
Of course, yeah.
Counterintuitive because I'm thinking
Absolutely.
about
You're trying
quieting my
you're
mind,
trying
which
to
is not
manipulate it.
quieting my
Yeah.
mind.
Mhm.
You know, it's kind of like in doing yoga when they have you do savasana and you're supposed to be like letting go. And I'm like, the only way I let go is if I fall asleep because the brain is just firing off.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
And
it.
is
I
your
mean,
brain ever really quiet? Because I don't know. We're as you said, Sarah, you said we're taking in 11 million inputs. What, a minute, a second? I don't know.
second, yes,
A
second.
second. So is our mind ever really quiet? I
I
don't
think,
know. I guess
yeah, I
it's a
mean,
different quiet, but you
it's a
understand where I'm going, where I'm like, we're taking all this info in, even if we're being quiet, we're still hearing, a mosquito buzz or the hum of the
Yeah.
light.
It's the
exactly.
non-attachment to it, though, isn't it? It's actually, I think the trouble we have is we're trying to control the mind. Where we it's the fight is with ourselves. And there's no fight to be had. It's almost the acceptance of the busyness of the mind. And when we can actually accept that, what would happen? And a great question is, what would happen if I was to accept this situation exactly as it is? And this is where journaling is also really, really good, writing down, because for some people, they can drop in really, really easily. For others, sometimes journaling and doing a bit of a brain dump and actually giving yourself 30 minutes maybe to journal and just playing with it. So having the intention to play with this and have fun with it, but allowing yourself to brain dump. And almost always, what typically happens after a page or two, we drop into intuition. So actually, it can come through in that way too, because we've allowed ourselves to empty the busyness of the mind, given it permission almost to have its say. And then we drop into a different part of ourselves, which is it's a feeling, it's a felt sense as well. You feel the shift, right? You
Mm-hmm.
feel that shift. But I think what happens typically, Xander, is people get impatient. They try it once. Oh, I tried meditation, didn't work for me. Or I tried that thing, it didn't work for me. And of course, it doesn't work if we're telling ourselves it's not going to work. It's something that we need to practice. That's why it's called meditation practice.
Exactly. It's a practice. I was just going to say, yeah, it's called a practice. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think when your mind's busy, like I'll often say to people, that's when you like, when they'll say, I'm not meditating because I'm not in this Zen kind of like place where I've left my body. And if your mind's busy and you're just observing, or maybe sometimes you're on a runaway train with a thought, and then you catch it and you come back again, that is meditation. Like you're doing it right. That is it. It's meant to feel like that at the start. Like there's always a little wrestle and the rumble because we're addicted to being busy. Like we get feel good dopamine emotions whenever we're checking the phone or, jumping over to the next thing, and all our adrenaline's running and our system's going and the body loves that. And then the minute that you tell it to slow down, like, similar to Jill, like I remember whenever I was in corporate and they put on like free mindfulness classes for it. And I hated it. I hated it. I couldn't even last like 10 minutes because no part of me wanted to slow down. I loved my busy mind. I loved being like fired up and tuned in and like all go. And to be honest, I was scared of what would happen if I slowed down. I was
oh yeah,
scared of the thoughts that would come up. I was petrified of what was underneath all of that. And it was so much easier to live in that zone of distraction. So, I get it. Like if you're listening to this and it's like, oh, well, I have tried and it is difficult. It's just that little nod. Maybe this is your little synchronicity and sign from the universe. Like just stick with it a little bit. Like, and know that all of us have gone through that journey of just being uncomfortable with being with ourselves because we're rarely alone with ourselves.
absolutely. And what I would say to the audience is you actually already have you already know what it is to have to do a meditation practice because we all learned how to write. And when you first started to learn how to write, it was a huge struggle. How do I make an A? How do I make a B? But we all stuck with it. And now we know how to write. I'm pretty sure if we need to write something down, if we need to journal, as Jill was talking about, you're not like, you're just writing because you know how to do it. You do that because you practice, because you built the Milan superhighway of how to write letters and how to write words and stuff. Now, here, Jill, I had a question for you because you were talking about journaling. I'm a talker, not a typer. I hate writing with a passion. It is so hard. So if someone is like me and needs to journal, can you just do a stream of consciousness, like recording a brain dump that way to find your way? Or do you think you really have to have that mind, hand, paper connection?
I think both have a place. But I would encourage anyone, yeah, for sure, if you wanted to do that and speak it, for sure. But something happens when you write. I mean, Sarah's actually written a book all on flow. She has a journal system for flow, and published a book about it. So she'll be able to tell us probably more around the science around why we journal. For me, the felt sense, I mean, I didn't either. I remember, Sandra, when I started journaling 8 years ago, and I sat down and I was like, I actually wrote, don't know what to write. This is annoying. Hate this. Lot of shit, basically.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
But here's the thing. I said this earlier to someone today. What we are not changing, we are choosing. And for me, I knew something needed to change. So if sitting down to practice, even for a few minutes, writing down a few things, just so I got myself into the space where I sat down, even though it was uncomfortable, and I wrote a load of rubbish for actually probably about 3 weeks, I'm going to be honest. It was just like, today it was a sunny day. It was like I was like 6 years old, Jill, right? And it was a sunny day today, and this is what I had for
The
my
sun
lunch.
was that, yeah.
But basic, like that's why I say to anyone, if I can do this, anyone can do this, because that was my level of journaling. But then guess what happened? I started to journal a bit more about my feelings and
Mm-hmm.
how I felt triggered about certain things, and actually what I was fearful of, and maybe some things that I was feeling. And actually now my journal, I've got stacks of them. I've actually got one right here, right? And I've got about 20 of those bad boys over the years. Thank goodness no one reads my journal in my house. I dread to think, but it's almost been like therapy for me
Sure.
because it allows me to fully express all parts of me, all the parts that are hidden, all the parts that I've maybe felt some shame around from my past. But it allows me just to empty that. And guess what happens when I do that?
Your
This
light.
load comes through. I feel lighter, and I start to almost talk to myself now as a third person. It's like consciousness. It's like the highest version of me comes through for guidance and for wisdom. It's intuition. So you can really tap into it that way too. And I would say to anyone, if you're looking to create change, if, as Sarah said at the start, if you're at that crossroads right now, what you are not changing, you are choosing. And even in the discomfort, be the one that says, I'm going to do it. Don't try it once or twice. Give yourself at least 30 days. And if it doesn't work, come back and tell us, because I'll be shocked, because we've yet to meet someone, if they commit to this for 30 days, that it doesn't work with, right, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, again, it's tuning into what feels right for you. So you can talk, but it's more powerful when you write because you go into a more relaxed state. But equally, you can do things like draw, like even if it's a symbol or an image, like you can paint, anything that kind of works with that part of the mind works really, really strongly.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
And I do get that. Although I am an incredibly loquacious and I would rather talk than type, I will pick up a phone and call someone before I will write an email.
Good too, though. We need more of that, actually. We were talking about this the other
Yeah.
day. No one phones anyone now.
Well,
Everything's email.
here's the thing that drives me up the wall. Little pet peeve here, which is I would much rather call you, Sarah, and have a 2-minute conversation that is a synchronous conversation to solve a problem than send you an email, you ask a question, and we
Yeah.
go back and forth. You want to know what? I just spent all day on something I could have solved in 2 minutes. And again,
Absolutely.
it's because I like to, I prefer to talk. I'm when I, it's my own thing, but when I try and write, I want to get done as fast as I can so I don't put my whole thing out. Best class I took in university, I had to give an hour and a half lecture. I was in heaven. It was great. Probably
Yeah.
why I'm a motivational speaker and a podcast host and all of that. I think had I been able to do oral exams, I probably would have much higher grades because I knew the stuff. I had,
Yeah, that's
I,
me
I
too.
had people, friends of mine who were like, I don't know why you don't have higher grades because you know this material much better than I do. They're coming to me to
Mhm.
study. And then they're
Which
like,
is,
but I don't get why you didn't get an A. And I'm like, because between here and here, it just doesn't go. So I'm not arguing. I think journaling could be really important because there is a difference between talking, frankly, making noise and being quiet.
Mhm.
mm-hmm,
Quiet is
exactly.
not an
Yeah.
adjective that gets used with me often, sadly, but
Yeah. And just very briefly, it's quite interesting. And I did wonder, I wondered if you were going to mention something about school, actually, like or the education system, because normally, like people who struggle to journal have had some negative experience at school,
oh
and
my
it's kind
God.
of tied to it's still kind of tied together. So it's interesting because when you spoke, what I heard you say was like when I speak, like there is praise and kind of recognition, and there's a nod to kind of like your level of understanding. But actually, when I wrote, I didn't get that, and people kind of said there was different grades. So there's a link and a tie between the journal and kind of writing down, like versus speaking. And so my invitation would be maybe for you is to like, how can you untangle that a little bit? How can you recognize that the journal like isn't homework? You don't have to get it right, and just give yourself permission just to dive into
Right.
it.
I'll tell you a super quick story about the perhaps the how deep this goes. I wrote my first book and I sat on it for 5 years, even though it was a really important book that I wanted to get out. And I was telling people, oh, I'm coming out with a book, but I was no more coming out with a book than I was going to the moon, right? And all of that was because I had all kinds of feedback that I wasn't a good writer. So how's anyone going to like it? But I got tired of hearing myself say that. I listened to my intuition and I just wrote, I put the book out there. And a funny thing happened. People started to, my first book was about sibling loss and my experience of losing my sister and stuff, and really important book. People started writing to me or talking to me going, oh, I really enjoyed your book. And for the first, I don't know, 6 months, you talk about imposter syndrome. I was like, really? Because I would have believed more if they told me it wasn't worth the paper it was printed on than that they liked the book. But then again, I guess the psychology of having more evidence to support that it was worthy versus a little CBT of what evidence do I have to support that it is, not worth the paper it was written on. I don't have any. So that whole thing. So very interesting. You're right. I should probably journal, try and see if I can unpack some of the stuff, quiet the mind a little. I love the work that you're both doing. I think it's so important and really yay for you.
Thank you. Thank you. That means
Thank
a
you.
lot.
I know. Could you imagine if you didn't listen to your intuition though and you didn't write that book? Like if you hadn't written your book?
I know. I mean, and
Yeah.
again, if you would ask me in university if I would ever author a book, never mind three, do you think you'll write a book? No, never. I hate writing, and I do. I don't like it. I just don't want to, I want to talk. It's why I do
Mm.
what I do, so I can just talk, because I'm so much better at it than I am writing. And yet I've written books and people seem to like them. So,
Exactly. So
Still
maybe there's
here.
a little, and it's funny, isn't it? Because the whatever we want to kind of call it universe life, but I always find it interesting that or the self will find a way for us to challenge that thought or behavior that holds us back the most. Like it will always bring us in the direction that we don't want to go to. So it, no surprise in a lot of ways that the universe will go, okay, one book, okay, you've done that. Still haven't received it. Okay, here's an idea for another
yeah,
book that you must act on. Okay, here's the third one.
Still
We're
not
going to keep
received
on
it.
coming at
Write a
you.
third one.
exactly. Exactly. Still haven't learned the lesson.
Still
Let's go
haven't
back and
learned.
do that
Okay.
again.
I know it's all about receiving it, isn't it? And I think definitely with us, and we have many values within our organization, but it is how do we, and we go back to like all of the things that you can achieve, but what happens when you don't receive it? And actually, when we armor up to protect ourselves, not only are we armoring up from hurt, which serves a purpose in many, many ways, but we also armor up from receiving and
Yeah.
really allowing ourselves to feel and receive. So we're cutting that off from everything. So it's how do we learn to really let that wall down and do life from a really open space, allowing ourselves to feel what needs to be felt, maybe from our past, and your part, Xander, around that part that's still not fully allowing you to receive. Because actually, when you learn how to let that wall down and really feel and heal that maybe tiny little part, that little wound, it'll allow you to receive it. And because imagine receiving the greatness of, I mean, you've written 3 books is
I know.
such a huge achievement, but to be able to go, actually, I love talking, but I've written these 3 incredible books that, by the way, will bring so much joy to people and help so many people. But it's so important to receive that. And I speak for myself because I've struggled to receive and really feel that. And actually, you mentioned your sister. My mum passed away 2.5 years ago, and that really cracked me open on another level. So I was definitely doing so much deep work within myself, but there was parts of me that I couldn't access no matter how much I tried. And I wanted to be able to receive on a deeper level, but there was so much fear around it. It's not safe, it's not safe. And actually, since my mum passed away, that part of me really cracked open. And I guess for the last 2.5 years, I've been learning to do life very, very differently from a place with the wall down.
Yeah.
And it can feel very frightening and very scary and go back to, I'm not safe, but it's every time we feel that, it's taking that step forward to change that narrative and to bring in that evidence of actually it is safe. And I'll tell you what, how I feel now doing life in that space of presence and receiving is very, very different from anything I've ever felt before.
I think that's great. And thank you for
Mhm.
sharing. Believe it or not, our time is, I mean, it goes so quickly.
So great.
So both Sarah and Jill, you've shared so much. How can people find you, get a hold of the information, really discover themselves again?
Yeah, so you can connect with us on social media. The best way is at Instagram, and it's we.r.ipa. And also, if you've listened to this and maybe you're thinking, maybe I'll journal, maybe I'll ask myself a few questions, but you don't really know where to start, we have a great resource that we'll share the link with, and hopefully you can include it in the show notes.
It's
called the Question Method, and it's 22 of our best coaching questions that really elicit you to get in touch with your intuition regardless of what stage you're at. So that's a really great free resource for everyone, because we want so many people to really start to access their intuition. So you can go on the link, you can download it for free, and you can start working with those questions and let us know, like send us a message and let us know the results that you get from it and the insights that you have, because we've had so much feedback from this of people having these wonderful aha moments.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. Honestly, truly an epic conversation.
Thank you so much.
And I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And as always, remember, epic choices start with the epic. Again, let's do it. I'm so excited. I can't even speak. Epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Xander at ZANDER@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.